Anthony. Welcome to the midweek market brief. On behalf of FP Markets, I welcome you all. Thank you for attending this video. The whole point of these videos is to differentiate the truth in the markets and the news from what's really being said on the mainstream media, and just to keep you informed and up to date with all of these motions going on in the world. Please like and subscribe. It means a lot to us. It means we can do more of these videos and hopefully they help you and are informative. Also, what's informative is our Traders Hub. It's free for all clients. It's there to be used and it's full of brilliant material, research and education, fundamental analysis, such as what I'm doing now, and from our other experts, some technical analysis. Let's proceed with what's going on in the world. There's a lot to talk about. A lot is going on. Nothing seems to change, but only get more intensified week upon week. As a lot of people would have seen, Taiwan did have an earthquake. Now, I say luckily, take that in inverted commas. Luckily, this happened just underneath the surface on the land. That means that the chances of a tsunami are a lot less. Tsunami warnings did happen, but they were dropped a few hours later. Now, the reason that I've included this news to monitor is because when there's an earthquake over the coming days, they will be on red alert for any potential aftershocks or more earthquakes. And because Japan and China, massive economic powers in that region, are right next to Taiwan, this is something to keep in the back of your mind to be prepared for. Hopefully it doesn't happen, but these things do happen. Luckily, also, only several people seem to have perished in this. And judging by the destruction that we've seen, that's quite a surprising number. So keep an eye on the situation. It's an acorn that can grow into a great big oak tree, and keep ahead of it. Here's a map of the actual earthquake, and as I said, you can see here that it happened just on the coast, beneath the land, beneath the surface, so that lessens the damage in terms of tsunami warnings. If we go and talk about now the elections. Now, we know the elections are in November, and we've got elections all over the world this year, that more than any given time. What makes this special is though, because we've got two characters we're dealing with. We're dealing with Trump and we're dealing with Biden. And out of all the elections, I would say this is definitely one that's more entertaining, because usually in other countries, when the parties are going for power or for votings, what they usually talk about is what they can offer, what their plans are, what they plan to implement, etc. What we're seeing out of America right now is a slagging match between the two. So especially more from the Democratic Party's side, Trump, at least with the Republicans, is coming out with things that he will change if he becomes president, whereas the Democrats are usually just spending all their effort and energy on lawsuits against Trump, defamation, accusations. And, you know, it's no surprise, but Trump has actually managed to lower the civil case down to 175. It was around the 450 million mark. He will pay for this upfront in cash, and that will be the case dropped. But it's actually an insurance company, the Hankey Group, who will compensate him in a nutshell, and they have admitted that they're firm supporters of Trump. We're seeing the lines in the sand being drawn now. We're seeing companies, powerful individuals who are taking sides, Trump versus Biden, Democrats versus Republicans. Trump has now got the support from three billionaires only a week ago, and now he's getting support from an insurance company, which will help him pay off this bill, this fine. If we see what's the Democrats' approach to things at the moment, well, they're going after individual Republicans, ones that have voted for a controversial IVF bill in the past. This can go one of two ways. This will gain support, people that can relate to the IVF situation, maybe even the abortion laws, things like that. This might gain support for them, but it also might be detrimental, because some may see this as a sign of desperation. They've tried going for Trump. It just makes him a martyr. So perhaps it's better just to go after the individuals. Who knows? This is so typically, I want to say, an American thing that tends to happen, but this is very common in elections in American history, that it tends to become a witch hunt, accusations flying left, right, and center. And it's always entertainment from a neutral perspective. If we actually go now, the controversial thing recently is Trump has been accusing the Democrats of inviting mass immigration into the country illegally and legally, and that these people would vote for the Democratic Party. There's no hard evidence to suggest, although it does point very much in that direction when you had over 3.5 million over the Christmas period enter the country. If we actually go to something very interesting here, Ballotpedia, it shows you the 16 states in America that you do not need an identification in order to vote. This is shocking. I do not see how this is democratic in any way on a personal note, but I'm sure anyone can agree. Having no ID, it means that anyone can vote. This does tie in with what Trump is accusing here, because a lot of the states, not all of them, but a lot of the 16 states that don't require ID are states on the southern border, such as California. This is where a lot of the migrants tend to aim for, is California and the southern states, because it's right on the Mexican border. And if we do see a massive surge in votes for Biden in those states, then it proves itself. However, this is something that you'll be able to speculate and theorize, but you won't know until it happens, if it happens in November. Still interesting to go through and have a look. No ID required, Washington, D.C. No ID required, California. Florida is photo ID required. Hawaii, no ID required at all. Illinois, no ID required. This is a very flawed part of the system, the electoral process. So it's an invitation to manipulation, it seems, and we could be looking at repeat of the previous election with accusations of faking of votes to count towards Biden, but it could happen either way. So keep an eye on this. Always interesting. If we go on to the current Ukraine situation, we won't touch too much into the conflicts because we see it every day. It is a morbid conversation, but sometimes we still have to pay attention to it because it is what moves the market, especially commodities, oil, gas, foods such as wheat, soya beans, and especially gold. One development we can see from Ukraine situation is a heavy focus on the south in the Kherson region towards Odessa. We're seeing a lot more attacks on the Odessa over recent week or two. Some are speculating, according to military sources, that Putin is aiming towards getting Odessa. If he can do that, he can cut Ukraine off from the Black Sea entirely. It will then, in theory, become a landlocked country, really affect the trade, but will also bring stability to the Black Sea for the Russian fleet. Why is that important? Only a few weeks ago, 2 massive Russian warships were actually sunk by Ukraine. So Russia have acknowledged that they don't have control of the Black Sea or a proportion of it, that they are on red alert constantly. And this is something that Putin obviously wants to change. In terms of attacks on Russia, we obviously saw that terrible terrorist attack, and there's still speculation of who's behind it, where did they come from, where did they go, things like that. We know they were caught, but where were they really heading? This is something that's escalating. We saw overnight, we can see here on the right-hand side, under some religious icons, ammunition was being smuggled into Russia. There's now rumors that there's more partisan groups in the south looking to take advantage of the situation in Russia, and these southern Russian areas here are likely to experience that. Putin has actually called up for a spring offensive, 150,000 conscripts into the military service. What's controversial about this is some are saying, is this a sign of desperation, or is this a sign that he really just wants to put a final nail in the coffin and push through? Risky either way. However, there has been reports of people from Far Eastern Russia, neighboring countries like Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, where these terrorists were from, accused terrorists were from. And there's also reports of Indians fighting within the Russian army, not necessarily out of choice, but because they happen to be in the country at the time and then they're called up. There's so much information going around. So this is a significant development. The more troops enter in the fray, the more violence that will ensue. If we talk about the other conflicts, obviously the Israel-Palestine situation, quite a few developments here, apart from the everyday bombardments, airstrikes, and deaths happening. There has been some ceasefire talks in Egypt. Instead of both sitting at the table like a month ago, which happened in Qatar, Egypt decided to mediate and invite the Israelis to say their part for 2 days, give the feedback to Hamas, and Hamas will then come and say their piece, and then they will put together a final ceasefire. I think it's a good idea. It makes sense, the previous attempt. So I think we're genuinely seeing some real attempts here from neighboring countries like the Qataris, like the Egyptians, possibly even the Jordanians and Lebanese, to try and de-escalate the situation, and try and get the hostages back and an end to the violence. If we actually see, the biggest development was the Iran embassy or consulate was actually bombed and destroyed in Syria. Iran have vowed for a retaliation. It gets confusing here because some are saying, was this Iran that did it on itself to escalate the situation? It's very believable because we're seeing in Yemen with the Houthi rebels that are trying to create a vacuum in the area and try and suck people into this conflict. Or this could genuinely just be Israel now basically going ahead and achieving their targets that they see that they want to achieve. So this is obviously going to escalate in the region. A few of its commanders were killed. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard commanders were killed. We can actually see that within Israel, Netanyahu is facing a lot of pressure from his own people, his own parties and government for a general election. People, in a nutshell, have had enough of the conflict. Israeli people, not all of them. That's a generalization, but there are tens of thousands that have taken part in protest for various reasons. The biggest reason tends to be foreign policy. Image is everything. Israel has not always had, let's say, the cleanest image over the years. It's always been a tense region. But, you know, it's always been seen as a well developed, stable economic country with good foreign ties generally, especially in the Western world. But that's under scrutiny now, and a lot of people are saying it's down to Netanyahu. And there has been videos, genuine videos that are easily obtainable online, where you can see Netanyahu talking years ago about how much he wants to go to war with Hamas, and it will happen one day if he's president. And it was before he was president. So, you know, things are playing out according to how he predicted, and people are seeing this now, and it's putting a bit of pressure. Regardless of your view on it, this is what's going on. So we could see a general election happen, a snap election in Israel, and it might give an opportunity to a new party to come in and actually try and sit down the table and resolve this in a more peaceful way. And this follows on this article here about the new round of ceasefire talks to resume in Cairo. Now, anytime now, Hamas should be receiving the Israelis' offer of ceasefire, what they want and what they can offer. It will now go to Hamas, and any day now, Hamas will then schedule with the Egyptian authorities and representatives to go over to Egypt and then conduct their part of the ceasefire. So this is an ongoing thing to keep an eye on, and it's definitely worth looking into now to understand what they're looking to achieve. Israel's biggest thing is that they basically want the removal of Hamas and they want their hostages back. They're not interested in occupying Gaza, so they say. They're not interested in any of that. They just want Hamas gone and they want their people back. Fair enough. But the Palestinian authorities and Hamas also have their own demands, which means the complete removal, basically an end to Israeli current airstrikes and things like that. So it's a step in the right direction and definitely something to monitor. The ironic thing is here, I just wanted to include this. I don't want to say for humor because it's a very morbid subject, but this just shows you the hypocrisy and the irony of everything. It's hard not to be biased in this situation, but you can see it as I scroll through. Over a month ago, US vetoes call for immediate Gaza ceasefire in UN. Wow, it seems like they want the war to continue. A month later, US calls for UN vote on immediate ceasefire in Gaza. What this shift says about America's relationship with Israel. Okay, we all know about this. This happened over a few weeks ago, not even that. Now, as of yesterday, US sends more weapons to Israel amid growing calls for ceasefire. Now, in America's defense here, this was a deal that was made a few years ago, and they're fulfilling their delivery as promised and paid for. However, if they really cared about ceasefire, I'm sure, and as other political pundits have claimed, they could have halted this and used it as leverage to try and get a ceasefire. And that's a very valid point. If Israel are waiting for more weapons and bombs to arrive, America can say, okay, we'll deliver it, or we'll deliver it in batches, but we need to see some de-escalation in the region first because we don't want our weapons being used. And okay, you've paid for them, well, here's your money back. There's many alternatives or ways this could have been used. Let's see, there's still time, but this is the current situation. So some may say this is virtue signaling to the highest level. We're not talking about entertainment or TV celebrities here. We're talking about conflict, people's deaths, and a game of chess being played. And it's very clear that America don't want a ceasefire, want to ceasefire, but here's some weapons at the time. And it's not just America, let's get this correct. You know, there's a lot of NATO countries involved, Western countries, who are also supplying and selling to Israel, but they're not also coming out at the same time calling for a ceasefire when they know that they are part of the reason Israel has weapons. So it's just a bit too blatant. It's almost like American media didn't think people would notice that. Well, I did. All of this fuels gold. We're seeing gold reach new highs. Yes, over the past few hours, as I record this, gold has taken a slight dip, but overall, we're facing new highs. Why? For everything I just mentioned and more. The world's not in a stable position. Some may say it's not as bad as it is. Social media inflates that. Of course it does. But we are facing unprecedented times with conflicts worldwide. Many different factors. It's not just the conflicts, it's the cost of living, food scarcity in certain areas, crime on the rise in certain countries, immigration issues. So much affects this. Therefore, gold is going up. It's a simple one to understand. Now, I'm not here to say whether you should buy or sell gold, but it's something that a lot of clients will ask me and my colleagues and say, where do you think gold will go? And we're not here to tell you where we think it will go, but just look at the charts, look at the news, and it explains itself. Gold is rising because it due to fear, because people are concerned. Gold holds value. It's one of the few things it's done, and it's been around for thousands of years as a form of currency. Therefore, the mentality is, oh no, the world is not in a good place, invest in gold. So just keep up to date with the news. That's why we do these weekly videos, so that we can kind of save the time for you. If we actually go to the next subject, which is about Bitcoin, Bitcoin is halving. I'll keep this very short. Now, the reason Bitcoin is halving is one, it happens every 4 years, but do not get this mixed up with stock splitting. Stock splitting is a different thing. Stock splitting is a stock may be valued at $500 and they decide to split it, create and double the amount of shares available for that company at, let's say, $250, fluctuating. So the idea of a stock split is to make more available and to make it more financially appealing. It's different in cryptos and in Bitcoin here. So it's called halving, and it's very easy to get confused. But the reason that they're halving it is because every 4 years it's designed to bring down the supply, increasing demand, increasing the price. So it's not designed to benefit anyone in particular. It just happens to, it will benefit the people that are holding on to Bitcoin. But the people mining it after this, because it's being halved, they might shut up shop or have to update their systems to be able to mine more. So Bitcoin is halving in a few weeks, therefore less will be available, meaning the value is going to go up. Typical supply and demand, definitely something to have a look into, and is likely to affect other cryptos such as Ethereum as well. On to economic events this week. It's NFP week. It's the biggest trading day of the month, this Friday. But today, as I record this on Wednesday, we've got ADP employment change, which is a nice precursor to the NFP. Previously 140K, expected to be 125K. Now the NFP might be way off on this, but the whole point of the ADP is to give you a sense of direction. We see a lot of PMI coming out, and also Jerome Powell is speaking later. However, we might not see the repercussions from that until way later in the evening, or when the minutes come out, or highlights in the form of press conference highlights on YouTube, for example. But a lot of people may be holding back. All focus will be on US dollar. We see building permits coming out of Australia tomorrow. So the Aussie dollar, Canadian dollar is likely to be affected. An initial jobless claim, so a nice mixed bag for Thursday. And then all eyes on Friday, where we'll see non-farm payrolls come out of the United States and unemployment rate. They come out at the same time, hence why it can be so dramatic. But always, always pay attention to the Canadian data, which comes out exactly at the same time, because This sometimes is when you can get loggerheads, and sometimes if bad data comes out of Canada and good data comes out of the United States, then they can really amplify the situation and shoot off in different directions. So that's what makes the NFP exciting. The NFP itself as a thing doesn't sound exciting, but it's just one of those series of events where things are coming out at certain times, data coming out tends to be easily predictable compared to, say, interest rates, which can be a bit more difficult to predict. So this is what makes it very appealing to traders. If you don't feel comfortable, do not trade this. I'm not mentioning this for you to trade. You might be someone that's very risk adverse. That's fine. Trade around it. Use the calendar like a weather forecast. So if we go on to the last thing I wanted to talk about was Tesla. Now, earnings is coming up. There's plenty of companies that have news. However, I don't really want to mention the smaller, obscure companies. I tend to mention the ones that you're familiar with and that are also available on the platform. Of course, there's no point mentioning small companies that might not be listed to trade yet as a CFD. Tesla, as with previous years, are facing a slight slump in share price. This is purely down to delivery. If we can see here, this dip here, the delivery is the same issue we've heard over the past 5 or 6 years, even before the virus situation. There is too much demand and not enough production speed. Now, there's a lot of internal pressure on Musk to build more factories, hire more staff. Doesn't seem to be complying with that and is more focused on the SpaceX side of things for now, it seems. So there's a bit of internal strife there. He's also remembering that he's also helped or is owning and running X, formerly known as Twitter. So perhaps he's spread himself too thin, but they can't build enough of these electronic vehicles according to the demand. And we've heard about this before over previous years, and this is what's affecting the price. Now, something that is very interesting to have a look at is this. Okay, go to your trading view. You can do it through the Traders Hub, or you can do it directly through the site. Is the earnings calendar. Now, there's a lot of companies here that you've probably never heard of, and likewise myself, but there will be some you've heard of. And the whole point of this is to see what's coming out each day. Usually it's done more by sector. So you've got tech sector and, food sector and things like that, pharmaceuticals. They tend to come out at the same time. But this is a great tool to use that shows you who's coming out when, their earnings, what's expected, what's the revenue forecast, just to get a step ahead for the possibility that you might be trading stocks. I will end there. If anybody wants to contribute, has any questions, wants to reach out, you can leave a message in the comment section. You can contact us via live support. So if you want to ask any general questions or you want to be put in touch with someone, please do request. We'll be happy to assist. And most of you should be assigned an account manager who has probably contacted you either by phone or email. And please feel free to ask them. They're not there to tell you what their thoughts are or to tell you financial advice, but they are there they can answer your questions. They can point you in the right direction. Apart from that, I appreciate your time. Thank you very much. And I hope to see you all next week. Take care.